I think this is a surprisingly good movie. I mean, not overly surprisingly if you have faith in Antonio Margheriti. Surprisingly, if you either don't have faith or don't know whom he is when you're watching this film initially. It is effectively gothic, and I start to wonder, what is gothic? I have my own definitions. What are the generally agreed upon definitions, the consensus of what is considered gothic? Well, what's considered a gothic film? According to the Free Encyclopedia, a gothic film is a film that is based on gothic fiction or contains gothic elements. Since various definite film genres, including science fiction, film noir, thriller, and comedy, have used gothic elements, the gothic film is challenging to define clearly as a genre. Gothic elements have also infused the horror film genre, contributing supernatural and nightmarish elements. To create a gothic atmosphere, filmmakers have sought to create new camera tricks that challenge audiences' perceptions. Gothic films also reflected contemporary issues. A new companion to the Gothics, Heidi Kay, said strong visuals, focus on sexuality, and an emphasis on audience response characterized Gothic films like they did the literary works. The Encyclopedia of the Gothic said the foundation of Gothic film was the combination of Gothic literature, stage melodrama, and German expressionism. In the Cambridge Companion to Gothic Fiction, Misha Kavka says Gothic film is not an established genre, rather contributing Gothic images, plots, characters, and styles to films. These elements are often found in the broader category of horror. Kafka quotes William Patrick Day's definition of the Gothic. It tantalizes us with fear, both as its subject and its effect. It does so, however, not primarily through characters or plots or even language, but through spectacle. Cinema suits the Gothic definition in creating images that establish the spectacle. Gothic films are part of early cinema, adapting Gothic fiction on screen like stage melodramas had previously done. Gothic works that strongly influenced cinema were those from the 19th century. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson, and Dracula by Bram Stoker. Like most early cinema, many silent Gothic films were lost or very short. In the aftermath of World War I, the horrors of war pervaded Gothic films. Robert Wien's The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, 1920, though not based on a Gothic text, exhibited German expressionism that Heidi Kay said transformed the American approach to Gothic cinema. The Encyclopedia of the Gothic said The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari became a milestone in Gothic film. According to New Directions in 21st Century Gothic, the Gothic Compass, scholars considered the Gothic films Frankenstein 1931 by James Whale, Dracula 1931 by Todd Browning, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde 1931 by Ruben Mamoulian as a foundational triptych from which they in turn look back to earlier Gothic films and forward to later ones. In Australia, the first modern Gothic film is considered to be Picnic at Hanging Rock 1975, certainly a major masterpiece of both our country and world cinema in general. But what is considered Gothic fiction in the literary format? Well, Gothic fiction, sometimes called Gothic horror, primarily in the 20th century, is a loose literary aesthetic of fear and haunting. The name refers to Gothic architecture of the European Middle Ages, which is characteristic of the settings of early Gothic novels. The first work to call itself Gothic was Horace Walpole's 1764 novel The Castle of Otranto, later subtitled A Gothic Story. Subsequent 18th century contributors included Clara Reeve, Anne Radcliffe, William Thomas Beckford, and Matthew Lewis. The Gothic influence continued into the early 19th century. Works by the Romantic poets and novelists such as Mary Shelley, Charles Maturin, Walter Scott, and E.T.A. Hoffmann frequently drew upon Gothic motifs in their works. The early Victorian period continued the use of Gothic aesthetic in novels by Charles Dickens and the Bronte sisters, as well as by works by the American writers Edgar Allan Poe and Nathaniel Hawthorne. Later well-known works were Dracula by Bram Stoker, Richard Marsh's The Beetle, and Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. 20th century contributors included Daphne du Maurier, Stephen King, Shirley Jackson, Anne Rice, and Toni Morrison. Gothic fiction is characterized by an environment of fear, the threat of supernatural events, and the intrusion of the past upon the present, or the present being haunted by the past. The setting typically includes physical reminders of the past, especially for ruined buildings, which stand as proof of a previously thriving world which is decaying in the present. Especially in the 18th and 19th centuries, characteristic settings include castles, religious buildings like monasteries and convents, and crypts. The atmosphere is typically claustrophobic, and common plot elements include vengeful persecution, imprisonment, and murder. The depiction of horrible events in Gothic fiction often serves as a metaphorical expression of psychological or social conflicts. The form of a Gothic story is usually discontinuous and convoluted, often incorporating tales within tales, changing narrators, and framing devices such as discovered manuscripts or interpolated histories. Other characteristics, regardless of relevance to the main plot, can include sleep-like and death-like states, live burials, doubles, unnatural echoes or silences, the discovery of obscured family ties, unintelligible writings, nocturnal landscapes, remote locations, and dreams. Especially in the late 19th century, Gothic fiction often involved demons and demonic possession, ghosts, and other kinds of evil spirits. Gothic fiction often moves between high culture and low or popular culture. I'd like to read out this quote now. This is from Nicholas Roeg, quoted by film critic Manny Farber. This is from 1975. It's something that obsesses me, the idea of how we approach, and where we finally reach our personal death scenes. Nowadays, when people talk of the Gothic cinema, they're really talking about camp. It's very sad because the Gothic is a tremendous cultural influence, not a funny thing at all. And I'm very happy that Nicholas Roeg held this disposition because it allowed Don't Look Now to be such a magnificent and unforgettable masterpiece, I'm very sure. And we'll close it here. Thanks again, everyone. Do enjoy your day. Most tremendously so.